Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you are well. I hope you are ready for a weekend of rest away from Formula 1, obviously gearing up for Azerbaijan next weekend. And I thought I'd take this time, obviously because I'm not streaming this weekend for the Grand Prix, to make another video where, again, it's going to be controversial because I absolutely love talking to you guys in the comments. It is my absolute favourite thing to do, and I'm sure you'll have some comments about this. So I was watching some American football the other day and I was thinking, what would happen if Formula 1 had a similar style draft system? And that's when I thought, right, I've got to sit down and I've got to think of the 20 drivers on the grid, and I've tried to keep it to the 20 drivers that are the most accessible, are in Formula 1 at the moment. Which drivers would get picked off by which teams first? And obviously it's a reverse order, so the worst team from last season, being Williams, would get the first pick. And I sort of went through the 10 teams and the 20 picks, and this is what I've come up with as my 20 picks. If there was an F1 draft, what I think the teams would go for. Let's start off with Williams, obviously, because they came last season, so they'd get the first pick of this season. And I think they'd want to go for someone who is experienced but wouldn't cost too much. I don't think they could go out and get a Hamilton. I don't think they could afford a Max Verstappen. We've got to remember this. It's got to be within the realms of their budget. And I think they would go for Sebastian Vettel as their first choice driver. I think he has that balance of experience and being able to get the best out of a car and being just a driver on the grid that is totally reliable in lots and lots of different scenarios on track. I think he'd be excellent for Williams, and I don't think he'd be too expensive to get hold of. I think Williams, because they're an old school team, Vettel loves his Formula 1 history, knows a lot about the sport. I think they'd be able to talk him around. Haas would then get the second pick, and I've gone for the fact that Haas, at the moment, they're living in a little bit of a communist culture, in the fact that Nikita Mazepin, I think, would still be their first pick. They need that money. They need the Uralkali money coming in. And because I think Mazepin's dad is likely to own the team in the next couple of years or so, I think Haas would still be their first choice. And I think Mazepin would still be the first choice for the team because he's got a little bit of a connection to the team. And I think we'll see that again as we go through these. But Alfa Romeo get the third pick, and I think they'd go for their boy Charles Leclerc. He has been there before, obviously made the step up to Ferrari, but I think if Alfa Romeo had their pick of any of the drivers on the grid, they'd probably want him back. He is sensational. He's a brilliant talent, an incredible driver. Could have gone in to win the Monaco Grand Prix. Didn't quite, obviously, because of his little crash at the end of qualifying. Didn't manage to start the race, but I don't think anyone would argue that Charles Leclerc is an amazing driver, and Alfa Romeo would get an absolutely exceptional deal on him. On that as well, Alfa Romeo have obviously sort of got that seat for Ferrari. Now, we're going to move into AlphaTauri, who are usually the B team to Red Bull, but in this case, they've got their first choice. So I've gone for Max Verstappen. I think they're going to steal the Red Bull boy and go for the AlphaTauri, trying to take over the top step in that Red Bull dynamic. Could they take the star of Red Bull's crown and actually push themselves ahead of Red Bull in the standings? I think that would be the way that they go. Obviously, politically, they probably wouldn't be able to go for Max Verstappen. But in this world, I've gone for AlphaTauri, thinking we're going to become the top team, and Red Bull Racing can become the second string team to us as we go forward. Now, Ferrari finished 6th last time out, which means they get the 5th pick. And they're the first team that I think could afford this man here. I think they're the first team that could afford Lewis Hamilton. And we know Ferrari love to go for a big driver, previous world champion. They did it with Alonso. They did it with Vettel. I think they'd jump at the chance to have Lewis Hamilton if they could. They would do absolutely anything to get him on the books. And as I said, they're the first team I think could afford him, and therefore the first team that I think would absolutely jump at the chance of having Lewis Hamilton. Alongside him, we're going to have another sort of friendly face at Ferrari. But first, we need to go to Alpine. And I think Alpine would go for Sergio Perez, I was thinking about this long and hard. I was thinking of all the drivers on the grid. What are Alpine looking for at the moment? Obviously, they used to have Daniel Ricciardo. I don't think they'd go back there. just because Daniel Ricciardo has shown that he doesn't want to be part of that team moving forward. So I thought they'd look for a different direction, but a similar style of driver in that they've been around the block, they've been to multiple different teams, they know what they're talking about in Formula One, and they can be a real title contender if Alpine can get the car underneath them. So I've gone for Sergio Perez and Alpine. I think, again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Alpine would go for Sergio Perez? I thought about, obviously, the French connection. Would they go for Ocon or Gasly? But I just thought Sergio Perez would fit the mould quite nicely there for Alpine. Now, we're moving into the top 4 teams. And as you can see, we're depleting. There's no Max Verstappen anymore. There's no Hamilton anymore. But McLaren, I think they stick with Lando Norris, I think he is just becoming Mr. McLaren, especially after the start of this season. He had a really good start to the last campaign, a really good start to this season, and Zach just absolutely loves him. He is going to be Mr. McLaren moving forwards. A bit like when we saw a really early 2007, 2008 Hamilton there, where everyone was like, he is going to be at McLaren for the rest. He is going to be amazing there. I think Lando Norris has sort of filled those shoes at McLaren. He's going to be the Mr. McLaren boy as we go forward. So I've gone for him as my first choice at McLaren. Now, Aston Martin, obviously Racing Point managed to finish 3rd place, but they do have Lawrence Stroll at the helm. So again, in a similar way to Nikita Mazepin, I think they go for Stroll just because he's got the connections to the company. I think they probably want to keep their CEO and most of their managerial team around. They want to keep the money coming in for obviously all of the new developments that are going in at what used to be Force India, now Racing Point, and then Racing Point, now Aston Martin. He's putting so much money into it. Mainly because Stroll is there. So I think they would want to keep that money flowing in. This is where it got interesting because Red Bull and Mercedes, they're going to want some title contenders. Just because they have the 9th and 10th pick doesn't mean they won't want an absolutely amazing driver. And I think Red Bull need to maybe go back on themselves a little bit. I think they'd end up going for Daniel Ricciardo. I think he's got the minerals, he's got the ability, and he knows the Red Bull team. I think they might backtrack. I think they might regret, obviously, letting Ricciardo go to Renault and slightly have to go back on themselves and pick Daniel Ricciardo up as their main driver going forwards. Obviously, because Max is not available, they don't really want to go for Gasly. I don't think Gasly is ever going to end up at Red Bull. And Tsunoda, it's a bit too soon. So I think they would go for Daniel Ricciardo after all of that Red Bull nonsense with him and going and then possibly going back and then not going back. I think he'd end up there. Finally, Mercedes. And Mercedes was a fairly easy pick. I'm not going to talk about it for too long. It's got to be George Russell, right? Obviously, you could say that they'd maybe want to grab a Bottas, but I think if they've already lost Hamilton to Ferrari, I think they're looking forward to the future. In 2021, who is the best driver on that sort of grid? Could it be Ocon? Could it be Russell? I've gone for Russell just because he looks like the most likely at the moment to take that Mercedes seat should Hamilton or Bottas move. I don't think they'll really be too worried about losing Bottas. And as you can see going forward, they've got the 20th pick of the grid. So they've really sort of, by winning, lucked out on the fact that they have just absolutely been able to grab Russell at the last possible point, because I don't think they'll be able to get Russell on the second run around. Moving back up to the 11th pick then, and we're going back to Williams. And Williams, yes, they've picked up Vettel, but I think they need a second driver who is going to bring the money to the team. So I think they keep hold of Latifi. I think Latifi is still there as their money driver, as a churning point for the money moving Williams forward. I think Vettel would quite nicely accompany Latifi. I think they'd get on fairly well. I think Latifi pretty much knows his place at this point in the Williams team. He is there just for the money. I think that's about it in terms of Williams. They need to obviously get a driver in there with lots and lots of experience. They need to get a driver in there that is going to bring in the money, and they've got both of those there with their 1st and 11th pick. Now, moving on to Haas, and I have gone for their second driver, Carlos Sainz. Now, I was trying to think of the Ferrari connection. I was trying to think of somebody who could really take Haas forward. Now, obviously, they've gone for Nikita Mazepin for the money. So now they're looking down the grid and they're thinking, right, we need a driver who is really experienced and a really, really good driver. Again, I thought about Gasly. Again, I thought about Ocon. But I think Carlos Sainz, just with that Ferrari connection, obviously Haas using the Ferrari power unit. Yes, Carlos hasn't been at Ferrari for very long, but in this scenario, I think they grab Carlos Sainz and take him and try and sort of use him as the number one driver for now until Nikita Mazepin can hopefully, for Haas, come together and maybe put together some points in the future. Could happen, could not. But then Alfa Romeo, I think they stick with Kimi Räikkönen. They absolutely love Kimi Räikkönen in the team. It's absolutely fair enough. He's an amazing, amazing driver. They've obviously got Charles Leclerc, who's their young and up-and-coming driver now. And now that they've been able to pry him away from Ferrari because they haven't had an option, they are able to have Leclerc as their main sort of go-to driver, that driver who's going to force the team forward, and Kimi Räikkönen as that old head, the fact that he is experienced and an incredible, incredible driver in his own right. AlphaTauri, similar. I think they keep with Yuki Tsunoda. You know, he's in the team now. He's just come into the team, and I think they'd want to pick him even if they had this draft-style scenario. I think they pick up Yuki Tsunoda as that long-term ambition. Yes, they could have gone for Gasly. I don't think they'd want a Max Verstappen Gasly cohort. I think we saw at Red Bull before that doesn't really work out. I think unfairly Gasly was gotten rid of, and I don't know if they want to go for that Gasly-Max Verstappen partnership again. So they bring in Tsunoda. You know, hopefully a long-term ambition is to bring Tsunoda through the whole Red Bull Academy, and they can keep hold of him for this season because in this scenario, he probably wouldn't have driven yet for any Formula One team. He'd be in the Red Bull Academy and that one that's looking to come through to Formula One. Oh, I've gone for Mick Schumacher. And you've just seen the Alpine one there because I accidentally double-clicked. I've gone for Mick Schumacher in the second Ferrari seat. Obviously, they've missed out on Sainz. They've missed out on Leclerc. They've grabbed Lewis Hamilton, which means now they can have Lewis Hamilton there as their old head, as their number one driver, and I think they can allow themselves that time to bring through a proper rookie. So I've gone for them bringing in Schumacher. Obviously, they want Schumacher in the future. It's just giving them an opportunity now because they've sort of been forced with their hand to bring him in to the setup a little bit earlier. But I don't think Ferrari will be too unhappy about that, especially considering this is the 15th pick in the roster. And as you saw, Alpine, I think, stick with Alonso. I don't think anybody else along the grid so far would have wanted to pick up Alonso in particular. But I think Alpine have a real connection with Alonso. They obviously brought him in for a good reason. They've brought him in for a little bit of experience moving into next year, I think. And I think they want to keep hold of him. He hasn't been great for them so far this season. I've got a video coming up on those 5 drivers that move teams. But whether or not he is that bad, I don't think so. I think he's been underplayed a bit. Obviously, Ocon is having a great, great start to the season, and we can't underplay that, but I don't think Alonso's been too bad as far. Then we move to McLaren, and obviously, with the McLaren drivers, they've got Lando in there as Mr. McLaren, so I think they go for like an Ocon. I could see Ocon being at McLaren. I don't know why. I think just because Daniel Ricciardo's already been taken by Red Bull in the first run around, I think they like a sort of style driver like Daniel Ricciardo. And Ocon and Daniel Ricciardo seem to have similar attributes, in my opinion, when I watch them race. And I just think they'd work quite well together. I could see an Ocon-Lando partnership building, and I could see them getting on quite well. Obviously, maybe they'd have wanted to bring Sainz back, but Sainz has gone to Haas now. So, yeah, I've gone for Ocon in the McLaren car. And Aston Martin, I've gone for Bottas as the second driver. I think, again, now that we're getting to the 18th pick, people are going to be looking for just a solid driver at this point, right? So they've got Stroll in because they have to keep him around for the team and the attributes that he brings to the team outside of just his racing. I think they go for Bottas just because, again, it's another great driver, old head, someone who can come in and really give Stroll some ideas of what they're doing. In a similar vein to how I think they've brought in Vettel this season. I think Vettel, now he's been taken by Williams. Bottas would have been a good second choice for them for that Vettel-style seat. Now, this is the first time I've gone outside the 20, and I broke my rule going outside the 20 drivers, because left we've got Gasly and Giovinazzi. and we've got 1 seat at Red Bull. I don't think Gasly is ever going back to Red Bull. I don't think Christian Horner will ever allow it. I think just because Christian Horner's ego would get in the way a little bit, and he obviously thinks that Gasly wasn't good enough, and then he's just shown in the AlphaTauri that he is electric. And I think everybody is a bit gutted that he wasn't given a real chance in that Red Bull. So I've gone outside the grid. I don't think they want Giovinazzi. I don't think they'd want Gasly. So I've gone for Hülkenberg filling the 2nd seat. Maybe as a bit of an interim in the meantime, and I feel like I shouldn't have really broken my rule for this one, but I just couldn't see Giovinazzi in a Red Bull for some reason. It just didn't click with me that Gio would go there. And then obviously that means that I have put Gasly in the Mercedes car. So that is my draft pick, and I think we're looking at a pretty strong season of drivers if that did ever happen. Obviously, Vettel and Latifi in the Williams, Mazepin and Sainz in Haas, Leclerc and Kimi Räikkönen in the Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri looking at Verstappen and Tsunoda, Ferrari looking at Hamilton and Schumacher, Alpine, Perez and Alonso, McLaren, Lando and Ocon, Aston Martin, Stroll and Bottas, Red Bull looking at Daniel Ricciardo and Hülkenberg, and then finally Mercedes with the 10th and 20th pick. I think they've done exceptionally well actually with Russell and Gasly. But let me know in the comments below if you think I'm talking utter nonsense. If you think in an American style draft, where would some of the drivers end up? Obviously, you might not want to do a full 20 like I have done here, but I'd be interested to see who you think would maybe be the first pick for all of the different teams on the grid. Thank you so much for watching. I meant to say at the beginning, thank you so much for 200 subscribers. We are launching this channel through the stratosphere. It is much higher than I thought it was going to be, but my favorite thing to do is talk to you guys in the comments. So thank you so much. If you could leave a like, that would be absolutely amazing. Thank you so much again, and I will see you next time.